to our first ever PM Summit. First, I would like to respectfully acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of this land on which we are meeting, the Wurundjeri people. My name is Cherie Colombano and I'm the National Sales Manager for Nelson Cengage Learning, the publishers of the PMs. You'll notice some people up the back. They're from Corporate Video and they'll be videoing today's presentation. We are passionate about literacy and confident about the positive impact that our resources, in particular the PMs, have on children and teachers. There are two reasons why we are confident about the impact of the PMs. We know about the detail and care that goes into their creation, and we constantly hear from teachers about the success that children experience with PMs in guided and independent reading. That's why I'm so excited and proud to be presenting this PM Summit. We'll be presenting 3 sessions where you will have the opportunity to hear about the PMs from 3 different perspectives: an author, a teacher and a publisher. To begin, our first session is to be presented by Annette Smith, and I am thrilled to be introducing Annette. Annette is a teacher, an assistant principal, an author, a curriculum advisor, consultant and a national treasure in New Zealand. We are all indebted to Annette as she has made an incredibly significant contribution to the success of the PMs. This could be a long story, but let me be brief. In the early 1990s, Annette sent a letter, not an email, to some managers at Nelson to ask if the PMs, a series that had been in use in Australia, New Zealand and around the world since the mid-1960s but had fallen out of favour, could be republished. Her reasons for sending this letter was because Annette was very concerned about the decline in literacy standards that she had noted in her role as the assistant principal at Puketi School in Hamilton, New Zealand. She knew that the PMs could address this problem. The Nelson managers were convinced by Annette's very persuasive text, and over 20 years later we now have over 1,600 PM little books, and Annette has lost count of the amount that she has written. We think somewhere around 600. So enough from me. I would like to welcome Annette to the stage.
Thank you very much, Cherie, for that. And I'd like to extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you. I look forward to meeting you all during the intervals and during lunchtime and having time to chat with you. And as Cherie said, I was a teacher. I'm a Kiwi. I was a teacher for nearly 28 years. I held several senior management positions in the school, curriculum positions as well. I worked alongside what was the South Auckland Education Board, now the Waikato School of Ed, people advising schools. I was withdrawn from classroom teaching to help teachers develop their reading records, would you believe, way back in the early 70s. Now I can see you all adding up now and taking away. Yes, but it was in the early, during the 70s when Marie Clay was developing reading records and the oral literacy program that she also developed. So I've had quite a bit of experience in that field. Then, as I say, I came out of teaching in 1997. I had nearly 14 years at Puketi School as the assistant principal. We had a very big school. I had about 300 children in my junior school, so it was a pretty busy place. I've worked, as I say, writing books and also working with the senior management at Cengage in developing the various PM literacy programs, so I feel very, very honoured by that. And we'll start with what do I know about children. Children are very precious. I believe it is a privilege to be a teacher because of the influence that we have on children every day, that they are with us. It's how we act, it's what we say, how we react will often have that long-lasting effect on children for the rest of their lives. So it's a great honour and a privilege to be a teacher. When I was AP at Pukete, I enrolled well over 1,000 5-year-olds during that period of time I was there. At the enrolment, 3 weeks before they turned 5, our kiddies can turn up to school on their 5th birthday. I would often ask them, what would you like to do when you come to school? And the answer invariably was, I want to learn to read and I want to play. And I said to them, we will certainly teach you to read when you come to our school, and you most definitely can play at our school. We do lots of playing here. These children were very excited, but they had very high expectations of what school was all about and what we could do for them. Now, one of the greatest gifts that we can give to a child is the gift of literacy. If we can help these children to become successful speakers, readers and writers, we make a child somebody. It is our responsibility as a teacher to know children, whether they are 5 or 12 years of age. We may be teaching children who are 7, but we should know what children are like in their conceptual development when they're 5 and 6 and so on and beyond, because a 5-year-old does not think like a 6-year-old. A 6-year-old does not think like a 7-year-old. Their world is continually expanding. Many things are happening in their lives as they grow in confidence and develop that independence. At 5 years of age, the young child loves to play. Toys, play and make-believe allow them the freedom to explore their expanding world. And this is why I say we must allow them to play. As they explore their expanding world, they see things in a different way from what we see them. They see birds chasing butterflies. They see ants crawling around the place. They see children fall over when they have running races. Children experience sibling rivalry as well. As a 6-year-old, they're beginning to make friends, but they play around with their friends. They don't really begin to develop firm friendships. They're sort of, one day you're my friend and next day you're not, sort of thing. We all know that sort of thing. They're beginning to understand at age 6 their family structure. They're beginning to understand the expanding world of their family. They're looking not just at their immediate family, but they're looking at the various generations and trying to conceptualise where this person fits and that person fits within their actual family unit. At 6 years of age, children, time is quite a difficult thing for them to understand. Even from the time from 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock is an awful long time in their lives. Trying to teach a child the difference between an analogue and a digital clock at age 6 is just about, you might as well hit yourself, bang yourself against a brick wall. How can you understand what 9:40 is as opposed to 20 to 10? You know, you can't understand that when you're 6. So these are conceptual things that at age 6 we've got to be aware of. At age 7, Team sports are becoming very important to a child. Now friendships are becoming important, and they're starting to firm up those friendships between 7 and 8 years of age. During this time, between really the ages of 5 and 9, children are making huge strides in their experiences and reasoning power, and concepts in the books that we give them in the classroom should match this growth and help it to flourish. By age 9 to 12, the world is continually expanding. Sequential logical stories are important for children's intellectual development because they help them to become aware of the concept of cause and effect. When they understand cause and effect, then they can relate this to appropriate degree to cause and effect in their own lives and their own actions. At this age also, they're suddenly beginning to realise when they're beyond Earth and beyond, they're also beginning to become aware of things that affect our environment and the wildlife today. So they've all got their opinion on this sort of thing, and they love to discuss it. So life is really expanding for them. I've always said one of the tricks we as teachers, and I'm talking to you as a teacher today, okay? One of the things we have to do, we have to get inside the head of a 5-year-old. And as I said before, a 5-year-old thinks in a different way from a 6-year-old. So when we're writing texts, and Jenny Giles and I used to do this quite a bit because we're from the same school, and we would think of a certain child and we'd say, how would he read this book? How would Sean, I won't tell you his other name, how would Sean read and understand this book? So whenever you were writing, we're thinking of a specific child aged such and such. And so that book has to match what we think that particular 5-year-old or that particular 6-year-old, right? So all the time we're inside the head of that child, and so the books must match that particular child or group of children that we had. Okay? So that was a real trick. What do I know about literacy? Quite a bit. Now, I'm really on about this, so if you don't go home with anything else, go home with this. Literacy involves receptive and productive processes. These are the 3 strands. Oral literacy, speaking and listening. Yeah, copy it down so you go home with it. Oral literacy, which is the speaking and the listening. The written literacy, which is the reading and the writing. And visual literacy, which is the viewing and the presenting. You know, you're presenting a film, you're presenting something like that. Now, all of them are interwoven. They're all important if students are to understand and create oral, written, and visual forms of communication. Now, visualise that child, all right? Now, language is a complex behaviour that determines our ability to think and interact with the world. By the age of 5, children have been exposed to thousands of words in a whole range of different contexts, including music, rhymes, and literary language of stories. Many children younger than 5 years of age already understand that specific signage, before they arrive at school, that specific signage, written signage, conveys meaning. Now, learning to read and write cannot be separated from listening and speaking, and Now, effective interpretation of texts is closely linked to listening and speaking, and learning to create texts is developed through speaking and writing. So we start with the oral, we move into the reading, and we move on to the writing. Soon you people will be beginning to realise that I am so passionate about getting the oral language right. We haven't got the oral, Brendan's sick of hearing me say about this, but we haven't got the oral language right. We can't read and we can't write. Have a little read through that to yourself. What I tell you, Elsie, Nellie and I put together some assessments for oral literacy. Okay. Now, one of the things we had children do, we're asking children to do, is draw a picture of your family. Everyone in your family. Draw a picture. Right? Now, this little girl, now, this is after they've been at school just for a few weeks. Just a picture of their family. Right? Then the teacher had said to the child, "Tell me about your family." And this is what this little girl said. Now, she'd only drawn the people in her family. I wonder if you can tell me, as you read through that, tell me something about what the little girl said. But what she's doing is bringing in to her speech things that weren't in the text, that weren't in the picture. She was giving us extra information that wasn't in the picture she had drawn of herself, mum, dad, and her brother. So she had so much control of her oral language that she was able to bring to the situation things that weren't actually in it. So she was adding. Now, keep that in mind. Look at the sentence structures. Look at the verbs. Look at everything in there. That's what you've got on. See, I'm on about this oral literacy. Come on. Right, now let's have a look at the next one. Again, 5 years, 3 weeks. Now tell me about this little boy. Where's the pronouns? No pronouns. Nothing extra really. Described a little bit. Definitely no verbs. So, no, he's lacking in so many things. So think about oral language and what in general spoken language. If he hasn't got the spoken language and the words in his head, he has got real problems, hasn't he? Right? Now, we have to teach the less prepared children. It's our role to fill those gaps. And these are children who are often very hard to accelerate because we may not have recognised the extent of gaps in their spoken and thinking vocabulary. Right, let's move on to the next one. Now, Dame Marie Clay, whom you will know from New Zealand, who developed reading recovery. She developed reading records very early on. That was one of the things that I taught back in the 70s, as I said, to other people, how to take running records, how to analyse them properly. Right. Now, she also developed the oral language assessment, what was called the Record of Oral Language. Now, this has been a huge influence on my teaching career and also on my work with the PMs. From when I started at Puketi School in 85, all 5-year-old children, after they'd been at school 3 to 4 weeks, their classroom teacher took the record of oral language. And those children who were at risk were quickly identified, and we gave them doses of oral language, not doses of vitamin C, doses of oral language, because I knew that those children, by the time they got to 6, because every child in New Zealand has to have, at age 6, 3 weeks either side, a 6-year-old diagnostic survey. Now, any child who is below par has to go on special programs or reading recovery. Now, I was tracking those children all through their first year at school. So the first year at school, these children had, there was a strong focus on oral language development. Right, Brendan? Now, you have a look. Murray Clay really influenced a lot of the work that we did with the PMs, from the very early PMs to the current PMs that you've got there. Now, if you have a look at that first one, it's a 3-word sentence, and look in the pic and you'll see a 4-word sentence. So those early sentences are the spoken sentences of a 3 to 3.5-year-old. Now, if a child does not control the spoken language of a if they are not controlling the spoken language of a 3 to 3.5-year-old, and they're chronologically 5, you cannot expect to teach them to read. So get your analysis going. They have to be able to control it in their head. Right. Now you see how the second one has got the adverbial phrase, so all of those, you add them together, they're the spoken language of a 3 to 3.5-year-old. Now, I really want to emphasise this with you, please, is the big picture. Now, we can do, it's our role to facilitate the conditions for learning. Now, we have to assess, but we have to assess the 3 strands of literacy. We've got to assess the oral, the reading and the writing to get the big picture, not just intermittent. Take a child and you've got to take the oral, the reading and the writing. You have to analyse it. Now, when you analyse it, you correlate the information from the 3 strands, and I can tell you from years, I'm 99 years old, from years of it, not true, for years of experience, what you hear, say when they're talking to you, you can see it happening in the reading and you can see it happening in the writing. I'll guarantee that. If there are weaknesses there, there's weaknesses there, and there's weaknesses there. If there are strengths there, they'll be there and they'll be there. So correlate that information from the 3 strands, please. Now, you've got the information, now you've got to get an action plan. There's no use doing all that without an action plan. And that has to be, I see that they've given you out something from the RARs, where the reading record's taken, where the analysis is done, and where the action plan is. You must have an action plan. It's no use digging the garden and then not doing anything about planting the vegetables, okay? Right, now, give that, in the action plan, make sure you give feedback to your senior staff, give the feedback to the parents, and give feedback to the child. Tell the child, you're doing this well, but this is what I want you to do next. And this will make you a champion. And so don't forget feedback. I'll tell you one secret that I always used to do when I would go into a classroom. If I'd sit down beside a child and they were busy doing something, I'd say, Cherie, tell me about what you're doing. And she says, I'm filling this in because Mrs. Smith said I had to. Now, that's not a reason for doing something. A child has to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it. They're not marking time till playtime when they can go out and play footy. They're doing it for a purpose. So every child, everything that a child does in the classroom, they must know what they're doing and why they are doing it. It's our responsibility also to build vocabulary, oral, written and visual. Read often to your children, not just when they're 5 and 6, but right through. Read to them, please, and choose your books carefully. Reading is learned not just by reading, but by listening to the written word. At all levels in the school, build word consciousness, awareness of words, their meanings and uses. Teach children how words work. Develop class word banks. Use thesauruses and dictionaries. Increase children's knowledge of verbs, adverbs, adjectives that convey imagery and deeper meaning to the text. Now, our most competent readers have a wide range of in-the-head vocabulary that they can use in all literary situations. Vocabulary is the key to a wider world. I'm excited about technology. As Cherie said, the letter I wrote to the company, wrote, hand-scripted. Technology excites me today and how it can be used in classrooms to further our children, further our Aussie children, further our Kiwi children. I want our Aussie and Kiwi children to be very important people in this world. We're not down under for one reason only. We are here to make a difference to this world that we live in. We all know this one, don't we? Model the process with the learner, share and guide the process, and gradually release that responsibility. Right. The next one is about the PMs. Now, what do I know about the PMs? Quite a bit, actually. During the time of the early 60s, New Zealand had, or prior to that, New Zealand had been using the Janet and John series. I won't go into big, but these books used the imperative text tense, such as "Come, John, come and look, see the boats." How riveting is that? Eh? Wouldn't it be exciting to go home and tell Mum, "Today we read this book that said, 'Come, John, John, look, 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 John, look.'" Then, two ladies, a school inspector and an education board member in what was the New Zealand Department of Education, felt this material was not suitable for New Zealand children, and books needed, greater story content and stories that reflected New Zealand's way of life. That's how the New Zealand books. So they started with 12 books, and they had a red one, which was called Early in the Morning, Red 2, which was Grandma Comes to Stay, Red 3, The Fire Engine, Yellow 1, Where is Timothy, and so on like that. And then went on to a green level, a country school. Then there were 6 miscellanies for the higher levels. The Hungry Lambs. We do have things other than lambs. The Hungry Lambs, Boat Day, and what have you. I'll let you read through the other. The vocab was fairly well controlled there, but it was a 1-to-10 ratio. The language structures were more the structures of everyday spoken language rather than the come John come thing, right, such as I am going, as you see up in there. And there had to be a story structure as well. Now, story structure is really important. I'll just give you a clue with story structure. Sam ate her ice cream is not a story, but Bingo ate Sam's ice cream is a story. Got it? Okay, on to the next one, Brendan. Right, what happened was these women, the team that developed those Red 1, 2 and 3 books, etc., that specific vocabulary was given out to publishing companies to write what they call supplementaries. Beverly Randall, the lovely Beverly Randall, who at that time her husband Hugh Price, P as in Price, and Hugh's best friend from university, Jim Milburn. Jim and Hugh had developed a small publishing company. Beverly was the teacher. So Beverly wrote the stories, the little supplementary stories that went with Red 1, Red 2, Red 3, and so other people were putting them out, but they made the big mark. This is where you get the PM from. The Americans think PM stands for packed with meaning, and we say, yes, that's okay. Don't worry about Hugh and Jim. Anyway, right, so that material was exported all throughout the world. So that was used in New Zealand. Of course, throughout the 60s and 70s, and in Oz, you people had it as well. You had all our PMs and or whatever all through those years. Right, next one, Brendan. Then, in the early 80s, there was a new thing coming into vogue. You know, teachers, you know what happens? We get this, and it goes in, and it goes out, and it's all over the place. I can see that my friend over here having a good nod. Yeah, it's because we've been around the traps a while. Anyway, so anyway, 82. No, we were being told in New Zealand, you were the Ready to Read series, which was out at the time. They said, you're not to use that. You're not to use those PMs. Get rid of those. You all have to do shared reading. And they were doing it, and they were trying to get these little 5 and 6-year-olds to read from this. It was a Don Holdaway thing. It was really hot to trot. So anyway, but what happened was, as I say, they lacked the grading controls. When the layout, everything was just awful. So anyway, Brendan, turn on to the next one, please. In my role in '85, I went in as the assistant principal at Puketi School, and I thought, right, I'm going to spend the rest of my teaching career with the first 3 years at school. That, to me, was the most important years, to get it right. So here I was in this new position, but I was getting more and more concerned. I'll tell you one thing, though, the very wise AP whom I'd taken over the position from, she had a store of PMs and she'd stacked them up in some cupboards. And I thought, right, this is it, and just sifted them into boxes. But then, over a period of 2 or 3 years, the resources that I had inherited were getting fewer and fewer, And I'm thinking, what are we going to do? We haven't got those PMs. We've got to get them back again. I made muttering noises to several other APs in the Hamilton district, and they all agreed with me. And then I talked to Jenny Giles and to Gail Robertson, who were in our junior department. They nodded, yeah, we'll do something about it, Annette. In my office, I had a notice up, and on the notice it said, "Believe in what you do and do what you believe in." All right? So I looked at that and I thought, right, girl, get on with it. So I thought, right, I'm going to write this letter. So, as Cherise said, it was a very persuasive letter. I used all those persuasive terms to a bloke, I writing to a bloke, persuasive. But I laid out very carefully what books I felt PMs should be kept from the originals, which ones reinvented, re-illustrated, blah, blah, blah. But I made it very persuasive. You've got to get it right, girls, when you're persuading somebody. Right, so anyway, it must have hit the mark, because I was contacted to head for Auckland and to meet up with Beverly Randall. Right, so here we were. I was a fear and trembling, actually. This woman called Beverly Randall, who had her name on all these books. Anyway, and I said to Jenny, Jenny came as well. She was a hard case. Came as well. Gail came too. Anyway, we're sitting there at this table. It was a rep, one of the, what was Thompson Learning those days, their rep at her place. And we're sitting there having lunch, and I'm sitting beside this famous lady. And anyway, we're going through some of these different things that we'd have these books and we'd redo those ones. Then I said to this famous lady, I think these books really need some teacher resources to go with them. She said, well, you can do it. I'm going, oh gosh, do I really? So that was my first start in writing teacher guides. But one of the things I did with the teacher guides, I thought one thing that I really want is, I was thinking of my beginning teachers. What do I want my beginning teachers to be able to do a quality lesson? And I said, I want them to be able to hold the book, hold that teacher's guide, just have it there in front of them. I want them, the whole lesson to be organised for them. And they've got the group of kiddies in front of them. Right, now I want in that how to create the atmosphere, how to start, whatever. And then I also put in them things like poems and stories that they could read that related to it, all those things. I put in things, language monitoring checks, and there'd be one on each page, and there'd be one to do with oral literacy and what have you, all closely related to that particular story. So with things like that, everything was focused on my beginning teachers and making sure they did a quality lesson. I didn't care whether they scribbled on the book or not. I'd buy them another one. But I wanted quality lessons from those teachers of mine so that those kiddies could go home with more knowledge. Every day they need to learn something new. One of the things that I said that I wanted, this was in this letter that I wrote, that I wanted, these are the things that they needed to have. We also developed a special little logo for each character, had their own special little cover design. And as I say, the title pages were the colour of whatever the book was. The daisy logo on the back was related to Sally and the daisy, so a colour petal. I'll tell you a little bit more about the levels 1 and 2. I better tell you that now. After we got underway and had the red, all the supplementaries for red, yellow, blue and green, I said to Beverly, look, I feel very concerned. I said, we need some books before Red 1, which is currently level 3. I said, we need something before that. And years ago, Beverly had developed what was called the PM Instant. I said, they had photographs. Let's do ones with photographs. So we launched into PM, the starters, the PM starters. We did 40, we did 20 of level 1 and 20 of level 2. They had to have a logo, of course. So that's where Beverly, in her wisdom, very wise lady, she says, look, the colour just softer than red is magenta. So we actually established magenta. So she said, we'll have the slightly open daisy. It'll be pink for level 2, and level 1, it's still a bud. So we had the bud for level 1. This is brilliant, I have you know. Level 1 was a bud. Level 2 was pink, slightly open. So these were the repetitive texts. And you know what? Levels 1 and 2, the purpose of those. Concepts about print. The 30 high-frequency words that are required for levels 3 to 5, and the sentence structures that are the sentence structures of a 3 and a 4-year-old in preparation for the levels 3, 4 and 5. Building the sentence structures, really important. So we established those. Right, now the PM philosophy. As you gather, reading for meaning is absolutely paramount for us, and unless children read with meaning, they are merely saying words. If young readers are to discover that reading is stimulating, rewarding and a meaningful experience, then they should be using books that are stimulating, rewarding and meaningful. What do I know about writing levelled books? I'll say one word: challenging. In fact, very challenging. They look simple. You take a level 5 book. It's got 70 to 100 running words. Who couldn't write a story like that within 70? But when you've got a controlled vocab, it is not easy. Teachers have used PMs for years. I know one in particular. They really struggle with trying to write a PM that's levelled. Those people who write extremely well at 24 to 30, many of them say, I won't touch anything that's levelled, because they know they cannot write within the controlled vocabulary. Let's have a look. I want you to look very closely at this because I want you to really take this back to your schools so that you really understand what levels, the PM levels. Now, when I'm talking about levels, I'm talking about PM levels. I really want you to think about PM levels. When people say, oh, they're on this level, and then that level, do they truly understand what the levels are? Now, the difference between levels in levels 1 to 14 are quite different from the levels between level 15 and 24 and the levels between 25 and 30. They cover a different period of time. Now, level 1 to 14 are very fine increments. They cover a period of 18 months. So between level 1 and level 14, the child is generally chronologically about 6.5. It's about a 6.5-year-old reading level at level 14. Our children, as I said to you, in New Zealand, at age 6, it's mandatory that they have the 6-year-old, the Murray Clay 6-year-old diagnostic survey. That's really important. At Pukete School, those children, I took every 6-year-old child enrolled for their 6-year-old diagnostic survey, so that I could see exactly where every child was and I could feed that information back to the teachers, the junior department as a whole, and so on. Right. Our children at Pukete were generally on round about 13 or 14 by age 6. So they were doing very well. Some were a bit lower, but on an average, between 13 and 14. You get a few skylarks that were higher, but yeah. However, you get other schools where the children may only be levels 5 or level 6, and the reason being, come on, got it in one. Remember, I said we took the oral literacy assessment early on, and then we gave them doses of oral language. Small group, individual, oral language. Remember one wee boy, Tom. I had a lot of pictures of different brushes. He looked at a picture of a toothbrush. He could not name a toothbrush, but he could say to me, it goes zzz. He could tell me what you did with it, as in he used the movement, but he couldn't tell me it was a toothbrush. So I'm talking about something very basic in a child's life. Right? Okay. Right, now let's have a look at orange. Now, as I said, the others were very fine increments. Now you look at orange, that covers a period of 6 months. That's 15 and 16. This is all in the back of your RARs, by the way. Well, this grid's in the back of the RAR teacher guide. See, so each one of those, down to silver level, cover 6, each colour band is 6 months. Now, this child's world is expanding. Right, from level 25, see emerald level there, 25 and 26, that's a whole year. So 25 to 30 is 3 years. There's so much to learn in your expanding world. So much to learn. At those very early levels, the vocab that comes in slowly, gets repeated, slowly gets repeated. But I'll talk more about that later. Right, let's look at shaping the PMs. It's all part of the levelling. Now, the characters are really important. You will find with the PMs, what we're trying to do with children is to give them this love of reading and meeting central characters. The central characters, in many cases, appear throughout the levels. The readers can identify with characters because they appear to be real children that they know. The number of kiddies that would say, oh, that's just like my cousin Jake, or yeah, he just looks like that too. And this gives children confidence because they want to read another story about a particular character. Now, you take Katie, her outgoing and impulsive character always feels real because she acts and reacts in ways that children understand. We then get imaginary characters like Jolly Roger. Silly old Jolly Roger, the kiddies love the way the silly old bloke loses his hat to start with and so on. They like to find out about him. So we reintroduced Jolly Roger. He was in Library and Stars. And then at, Library and Plus. And then at Stars, I said to Deb Croft, who's got a real sense of humour, she's from Gunnedah in Sydney, out of Sydney, and I said to her, Deb, a pirate needs a parrot. He needs a parrot. Can you think of a story to do with a Jolly Roger and his parrot? And then I had another good look at Jolly Roger and his red boots, and I said to Elsie Nellie, by the way, Elsie Nellie, been a great friend and colleague for absolutely years, back in the 1970s, Forest Lake School. I was in room 10, she was in room 11. So that's to say we go back a while. I said to Elsie lives about 3 k's from me, and I said to her, oh, Jolly Roger and his red boots, let's have him slipping off some rocks or doing something mad like that. So that's how that story evolved. But kiddies love to find these characters again and again. You'll notice with the PMs, our family structures, even right back to those very early ones, Sally and Mum, you know, the character, Mum and Dad were separated. And this is right back, so it's not always Mum, Dad and 2 kids. Max lives with Grandad. There was one rep said to me a few years back, oh, some of our teachers want to know why Max lives with his granddad, as if he was a real character. And I said, well, I happened to be watching a TV program in the States, and I saw, pardon me, I saw a tornado, and the mum and dad were killed, and the little boy baby had to live with his grandfather. And I thought that would make a good structure as well. Richard Hoyt, who has illustrated those books, is a real champion. He's a Kiwi. Names are important to us. Why do you think I chose those names for PM photo stories? Pardon? Mm-hmm. Everything we do in PMs has a purpose. Pardon? Oh, sorry. You read them out.
Lily, the wife here, is the wife hungry and happy, which is a word that's used extensively level 3 to 5. And then Josh, the sh is from should, which is introduced at level...
Shouted.
Shouted, see? Shouted, which is introduced at level...
5.
5.
See? Everything has a purpose. Prior knowledge, leading in, and short consonant, vowel, consonant. Got it? Got it? Right. Many stories based on real life. Bingo's ice cream. I saw that happening at the beach. You know, family ice creams, dog jumps up, blah. Thought, right, good story idea. New glasses for Max. I have a thing about little boys and glasses. Little boy, and the reason being, I've worn glasses since I was 3 years of age. I'm very conscious of children's eyesight, and I'm so pleased boys are being picked up early on. How many of those boys want to wear their glasses? The number of excuses I got were that long. I got, oh, Mum forgot to put my glasses in my bag, Mrs. Smith. Oh, I forgot them, I don't know where they are. So I wrote new glasses for Max, level 14. If you haven't met it, I'm sure Cherie will be able to pluck it out for you. As a support for our wee boys, to say to them, it's okay to wear glasses. Girls, fine, fashion statement, but boys, no, right? And I really want our boys to be successful. The story of our old friend Bear, I don't know whether you remember those stories, several of them, happened. All of those different things truly happened. The lab, one of our families had this dog, which they actually called Bear, because when they got the dog as a little pup, it fitted in to Alan, the guy, his hand, the father, and it just looked like a bear, so that was why he was called Bear. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so Bear, really, all those stories were true. And when I wrote the final story, which is at silver level, I gave the family a copy. Well, Glennis was tears pouring, yeah, because I wrote it as it actually happened. So all of those stories have a ring of truth about them, and that's what we try to do with the PMs, have a ring of truth, so it brings about that emotion, it brings about all those things where children can bring meaning into their stories and into their lives and take it beyond like that. Right, writing criteria. Now, precise levelling, absolutely precise levelling is essential if a child is to gain success and to avoid reading at frustration level. I have a real thing about this, ladies. Please be very careful with that. These are the things that we will cover. Go through those, and all of those should support the PM philosophy of success, enjoyment and understanding. Success, enjoyment is what reading should be all about, and understanding. Absolutely important. Right, next one, Brendan. Right, now I've talked to you about the various concepts from a 5-year-old and 6-year-old and so on. Now, texts at these higher levels, they're far more demanding. This is a level 26. It's one of our new ones that's just been published. And they're matching the child's growing maturity. They challenge the child to think beyond the text, encouraging them to explain generalisations and present their point of view. Now, I'm sure you've heard this coming from parents. Oh, but my child's age 6 and my child can read a book like that. Oh, I see lots of smiles around the place, yes. One of the things that I've put in the RARs, first thing is retelling. Put the book away and retell it. could that 6-year-old really retell? Could that 6-year-old answer properly, in depth, the quality of questions that you would pose for a level 26? Level 26, you're into applied knowledge. You are going beyond the text. You're wanting them to make generalisations about this. Can that 6-year-old do that? Maybe you have some super highly intelligent children we haven't got over the way. But what I would say to you, please, don't be pushed. Don't feel guilty. I know I had a parent come to me and say, "But my child should be reading much higher than that. I believe my child." I'd say, you get them to settle down. You start talking to them about it. Yeah. There's an awful lot of pressure put on you people. I really feel for you. So have your guns loaded and talk about retelling. Talk about the type of vocabulary that's used. Talk about all sorts of things and they're in the higher level books. And you'll see in ours there's all sorts of things like maps, there's all sorts of things that link in with non-fiction. In your fiction, there are higher levels of, the sentences are longer. Much longer the sentences. Have higher order of vocabulary. Vocabulary that gives imagery, gives all sorts of things. So just be careful not to push those wee people on. Right, with the PMs, levels 3 to levels 20, 23, 22 in a gold. We have specific high frequency that defines that level. The books are meticulously levelled in 1 to 20, which gives you a 95% accuracy. Now, you as teachers know that 90 to 95 is guided reading. 89% frustration level. Don't go there. 96 and on, independent. Reading it independently. When children are reading at the 95% accuracy level, the flow of their reading allows them to concentrate more fully on meaning. The best way to build up that sight vocabulary is to meet these words within context. So we've deliberately consolidate the new words at each level. Many of the PMs have the same words but within different contexts. So let's take a level 13 book. Now, there are specific high frequencies for level 13. All right? Now, in that, now I'm very strict about this, because what we're doing is whatever that book might be about, right? We build some of those high frequency words into that particular book. But I also insist that we put in words from the 2 levels below, because the 2 levels you are reinforcing. You know the old thing with teaching, we go that far, then we go back, and we practice. We go that far, we go back. And that's what we do with the PMs. So that if it's level 13, we are putting a certain amount of level 13 words in, high frequency, and then we're making sure when I analyse them out that we've got X number of level 12 and level 11 words as well. so that when it's balanced, and we have to be very careful that new words, new interest words, they can only be X number. You cannot have lots of new interest words. This is where some other writers who try to write PMs for us get all mucked up, and I have to redo things. Yeah, but anyway, so also what we try to do is to have all these different contexts, so that's a level 13 or level 20. There's all the different contexts so that you can pick just the right book to suit that group of children. And then you've got another group of children, you pick just the right book to suit those children as well. Right, let's have a look at these ones. Now, as I've said, you're getting used to what I'm talking about with the levels 1 and 2. These are the type of vocab that we use and the sentence structures that we use in level 1 and 2. Now, levels 3 to 6, we're adding more adverbial phrases within the sentence structures. Level 7 is when we introduced and as the first conjunction. Before that, we've had it as just joining, say, two nouns, mum and dad, prepositions up and down. But now we're lengthening the sentences from level 7 so that we're adding 2 clauses. So that's quite a big step for kiddies to move into a 2-clause sentence. They've got to read through, come back and read through like that. That takes quite a lot of mental energy. See that one at the bottom there, away went the fox? That's literary language. So we're bringing up that literary language in as well. So it came in at a level 5 book in PM Plus. And what it does, not only brings in literary language where the children say, away went the fox, but it's also giving movement. So in your head, you're thinking the fox is speeding off, racing off at great speed. Right, so you know where we are with these simple sentence structures here, the very early sentence structures. Right, now let's have a look at you see that I am drawing, look at me. Right, now let's move into a level 3 where it is a proper story structure. Now, here we've got the high frequency words here. Capital here. By the way, you'll see in the cards that I did out over there, if you haven't seen the PM reading and writing cards, I've actually done 40. There are 30 high frequency words, but there are some words where I've done such as here with a lowercase h and here with a capital H. That makes quite a difference visually for some children, and they've got to know why that one's got a capital H and that's got the lowercase. So here we've got 3 different sentence structures on a page. See how we've eased them in? You see it, levels 1 and 2. Now levels 3 different sentence structures, but I've given them the security there of the 2 capital heres, but the structure, they can't just trot it out. They actually have to attend to print. So here is and comes, and then you've got kitty cat and lizard and hungry. They all take quite a bit. As I say, you keep thinking of that wee chap who had no verbs at all in his oral language. So there's that wee guy had to be developed, as I mentioned before. Right. Now I want you to have a look at this one. Now, the text should have a few challenges in the vocab and the sentence structures, but there should be enough challenges for the children to experience success, but not too many that could lead to failure. That's not part of the PM thing. The PM is always success. Some people seem to think that every book you give a child should be difficult. How would you like to try? I'll tell you what, try to read some of these technology manuals or read something that's a medical thing where I'm sort of, I don't know why some parents always think that a child has to have a difficult book. Unless they have a difficult book, they're not learning. Yeah. Okay, so there should be enough challenges for the children to experience success, but not too many that could lead to failure. Now, this text here, and this is two successive pages from the one about Mother Lion and her cubs. Now, have a look to see how on, 8, 9, we've got but joining two clauses, and then further on in the next one we've got and. So you can see how it's just gently bringing it along but easing them into it, because that book I think is level 10. Level 10, as I said, and the first conjunction at level 7. But is a high frequency word for level 9. So we're just easing them quietly into it. The running word totals, there's another thing that I want to tell you. The running word totals are rigorously controlled at every level. Now, I said to you before, try and write a level 5 book, which has got between 70 and 100 running words. You see, what I've done is I've set out specifically at each level what the parameter is for the running word totals. We don't have so many in that a child is exhausted at the end of a book. That's not what it's all about. So we're easing them and just increasing the running word totals from level to level. Now, have a look at this one. Punctuation is really important. You all know that once a child begins to read full stops, they're beginning to read with meaning. Now, in this one page, look at that. You've got your quotations marks, you've got commas, you've got exclamation marks, and you've got full stops. These are all triggers for the child. Imagine a child who has had very little literary language and experience with books before coming to school, who has not seen these things before. Look at the clarity of how that punctuation has been placed. Clarity, I've often said this, that when buying a house, it's location, location, location. With the PMs, it's clarity, 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 if we are driving meaning. Now, the font shape. We don't put ligatures on the font until level 15, and they happen in narratives, not in non-fiction. We're easing children through. Placement of the text on pages are really important. In our landscape books, there are 8 lines of text per page. Now that includes paragraph spaces. Portrait, we go to 10. All of these things are really important if you want your child to be a successful reader, and that's why the PMs are successful. It's these cunning things that we have put into it. But we're doing it for children. Line breaks. Heron walked into the river and looked down. I like looking at myself in the water, he said to an old green frog. I am very beautiful. Why do we have line breaks like this? Come on, you brilliant teachers. Great. Somebody else? It's the natural phrasing of the English language. Once upon a time, there were 3 billy goats gruff. You know, the rhythms of the English language. And this is the rhythms of the English language, and that's why the line breaks are done like that. So that children, when they read it aloud, they're reading with the rhythms of the English language, which drives the meaning. Okay, this one. I go back to the word clarity. Clarity of the artwork with no distractions. Anne Spadvilas, one of your great illustrators, I was so honoured to have her do this book of mine. There it is, no distractions. Look, marry the text with the illustration. Dear old Kitty, just before that, Brendan, I was very honoured to have Ben Spivey do these. Kitty Cat would never have been so successful. It would have only been words on a bit of paper from me if it hadn't been for Ben Spivey bringing that book to life. We have people such as Isabel Lowe. Isabel Lowe, who did the Baby Bear books. Isabel was such a super lady, super lady, and died too early with breast cancer. But absolutely, she was a really, she made the Baby Bear books for Beverly. The text and photographs. The photo researchers from Sengate, I know this sounds like but honestly, they go to the nth degree to get the most perfect match of text and photograph. They go to no end to get the absolute perfect match. And that's quite thrilling and very, very satisfying. All right. So they're meticulous. I'll sort of leave you with a few things here. Meaning depends on the choice of every word in every sentence in every paragraph on every page. If we have to change a word, which we do often, even as during the process, I can tell you it has a ripple effect, and sometimes we have to change things several pages back. But we want to get it perfect. Now, reading aloud is really important. I want you to do this with your own children in the classroom. Develop the skill with your children. When they have when they have written their story, written a bit of text, it can be 1 or 2 sentences. Give them a peer, and one of the peers. Sit with a peer, could be a buddy. So, read it out loud. Now, that other child will be critically analysing, and they're learning things as well. And then in turn, that child can read it aloud as well. And so what they're doing is really looking, and not waiting for the teacher to say, why didn't you use such and such, or have you thought of using such and such a word? Teach your children at all ages how to read their story aloud, or read this 2 or 3 sentences aloud, and give each other feedback. And that's the learning process going on. Right. PMs, as I say, have given many children worldwide the wings to fly, and that's what we're after. I'll just leave you with this saying that I picked up in the New Zealand Herald the other day. Quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt: "We cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future." Thank you.
We've got a couple of minutes for questions, and of course you can meet Annette at morning tea
Definitely.
time. But if there are any questions that are burning there, I've got a couple that I already put together just in case, which I didn't warn Annette that I'd ask these questions. Lots of people ask us about reading recovery levels and PM levels. Are they the same? Are they different? Can you just give a quick
Right.
discussion of that?
Okay, reading recovery levels. Now, reading recovery, they choose books from different publishers. Then a group of people sit together and they decide, what level do you think this is, Cherie? What level would you reckon this is, Pam? Oh, well, it could be. Not sure. And they say, oh, let's get the PM levels out, shall we? Because the PMs, they don't level their books, they write to a specific level. So let's use the PM. So that's a PM level 15. Then perhaps, yeah, right. No, definitely not. Right. Yeah. So that's how the reading recovery levels work. I'll tell you that, I know what.
And I still have another one. It looks like it's all me. Which is about dual levels. So we have like a level 5, 6, and then like an 8, 9. There's no level 7 in non-fiction for that because of that. Can you explain that?
Right, definitely. Right, non-fiction. Now remember, we're going back. In the 90s, we did the narratives first. Then I said to Beverly, let's do some non-fiction. She says, okay, right. Now, what we do, right, so we talked about what we would do for them, but our big worry was with non-fiction, because it has text-specific words in it, that sometimes we have to pinch some words for from another level. So I said, let's take this colour band, this will come with this colour band. It will be, say, a level 5, 6 book. So that if we have to use, this is how strict we are, some level 6 words, because it's non-fiction. Now, I'll tell you this, children learn to read at the early stages on narrative. See, I got the finger out. My family knows me for this. They know I do either this or this. They call it either my teapot or my sugar bowl, right? Okay, so I got the teapot out. Okay, now, children learn to read on narratives at those very early stages. We put in the dual level to ease them into non-fiction. You know, with non-fiction, you can open a book at any stage and read. It doesn't matter, you could open it at 8, 9, then open it 2, 3, or you could open it at 16. But with a narrative, you have to open it at 2, 3, 4, 5, through to the satisfying ending on page 16. Right? That's what a narrative's all about. So this is where it is. I don't know why people get so hung up on non-fiction at those very early, tiny little increments from levels 1 to 14. And they'll say, but you haven't got a level 7 non-fiction. Come on, these are little people we're talking about. Let's do our analysis do our running records on narratives. Let's see what skills and strategies that they've got, what we need to improve and what we can do to help them, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and so on. Narratives. Now, don't get hung up on non-fiction at those very early levels.